Now, without further ado, I'd like to call Mr. Akshay Verma, but before I do that, I'll introduce him to the audience here. He's a young entrepreneur and he's the founder of 3 ventures already. He has done his graduation from St. Stephen's College, and thereafter he attended Oxford University and also Columbia University. And he worked for 3.5 years in UBS Investment Bank, London. Later he founded Skill Depot, which is a unique information discovery platform, and Ryan Rating Services. And the third venture of his is a non-profit organization which is going by the name Agratam India. It works closely with fishermen to improve their livelihood and facilitate banking assistance and training in modern techniques of fishing. So before we call him, we'd like to play a little video and then he come and present.
I'll speak about anyone.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, so a round of applause for him, please.
Hello. Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm honored to be here. Very quickly, first I'll tell you I was born in Bokaro, which is very close to Jamshedpur. And my father studied at Loyola and my Bua studied at Sacred Heart Convent. And my grandfather worked here for 9 years. So it's very close to my heart that I've had the opportunity to come to Accelerate Jamshedpur. Before I begin, let me thank Anand for a brief introduction. So like I was telling you, I'm originally from Bihar, and then my father and my mother, they're both in the services, so they get transferred a lot. So I then moved to Delhi when I was very young. So I did my schooling in Delhi, then went to Stevens, did my graduation in maths, then went to Oxford, did my master's in financial economics. It was 2008 when the markets were really bad, Lehman had gone bust, Northern Rock had run, Payson went bust. But luckily I got a job somehow. So I was there in London for about 4 years, working with UBS Investment Banking, their private equity arm, and leveraged finance. But then there was one moment where, I don't know, maybe you guys know of this company called BHP. It is a mining giant from Australia. And they made a bid. So Marius Kopler was their CEO. It was a very tough time. He'd already made 2 hostile bids for 2 targets which had failed. And he presented a 3rd hostile bid for Potash, which was a Canadian asset, and also listed in Canada. In front of his board. So I was working on that deal. It was a $45 billion all-cash deal. So very sensitive. BHP was listed at the London Stock Exchange, at the New York Stock Exchange. And unfortunately, I was stuck in London. So my client was Australian, the target was Canadian, and I was in London, so in between 3 time zones. And $45 billion is not something that any investment bank has in its pocket. So I had to work a lot with the group CEO, who was Mr. Oswald Grubel at that time. So actually, let me give you a little bit of background before that. I joined my team in 2008 July. My team was 28 people. In December 2008, we had only 7 people left. 21 people had been fired from my team. So although it was a terrible time, but it gave people like me a lot of opportunity to grow very quickly and to take on more responsibility very quickly. So during this BHP deal, I was working with the CEO and the head of my team. And we did this deal 15 days. I didn't go home, and no one really went home with banking. So it was a tough time, but a great deal. The bid was accepted. We were flown around private jets. There was champagne everywhere. I was in the Financial Times getting bites. But then something happened. I realized that I never really saw what $45 billion looked like. I was sitting on my computer. We did the trade. We made the proposal. Everything got accepted. Apart from the team at BHP, I never met anyone from Potash. I never even went to Canada. I don't know whose life got impacted, whose life did not get impacted. A lot of questions started happening to me, although I loved what I was doing. There was this thing inside me that said, okay, maybe I need to take a break, and maybe I need to explore what is really bothering me. And at that time, I was also, I was one of 3 people in UBS who were rated outstanding across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I was responsible for recruitment from the East Coast business schools and Oxford and Cambridge. So Harvard, Stern, Columbia, Kellogg to some extent, and UPenn, so Wharton, and also Cambridge and CRHEC. I was looking at their recruitment also and training these guys. So every time these MBAs would come in, they'd all be 30 plus, or they'd be 28 plus, and I was 26, or going to be 26. And I thought that never in my life did I get time to take a break and explore what I really wanted. I was always running. When I was a child, I was running. I went to college, I went to master's, I went to a better job. I never took a break. I never took a gap year. I never traveled like the other people had. So I decided to take a break in 2011. I resigned from UBS, but they were very kind. They gave me a sabbatical instead, and they sort of paid for my education also. And I went to Columbia to do a master's in public administration. I didn't do an MBA myself. I thought a second master's was not going to add to my career, but I wanted to learn something from it. I didn't want it to be a waste. And plus UBS was paying, so I was like, okay. And Columbia also paid. I was funded. So I went to Columbia and did a master's. And I just want to share a video from, I was president of the Students' Union there at Columbia, at my school. And I want to share a video from that, because that will also explain to you and give you insight into what my thoughts were before I started my venture. Because in 2011 when I got, the plan was to go take a break for 2 years, figure out my life and come back to UBS. So just bear with me for this video, and then I'll talk to you about the 3 ventures and my journey so far.
Thank you very much, George. It's now my pleasure to introduce 2 future leaders of global public policy and recent leaders of our own CISA Student Association. So please join me in welcoming Akshay Verma, a Master of Public Administration student concentrating in sustainable energy, and Paul Hirsch, who is graduating today with a Master of International Affairs, concentrating in urban and social policy. Both of these students have not only worked hard academically, as have you all, but have also given generously and diligently of their time and attention to the concerns of you, their fellow students. So please join me in thanking and congratulating Akshay and Paul, and welcoming them to the stage.
Good morning. I'm deeply honored to be given the opportunity to speak at our commencement and address this community of compassionate, responsible, and determined individuals who are committed to bettering the world we live in. I also want to thank my mom and sister and the rest of our families for being here to support us, for taking pride in us, and for sharing in our happiness. I also want to thank my CPASA board and announce that our class gift fundraiser was a success. The class of 2013 will leave our mark with a cherry blossom tree in Ansel Plaza. Looking back on the first day I arrived here, it was the day when all of you were being hosted by CPAL Ansel Plaza. I was a misfit. Walking around in my shorts and flip-flops, I was nervous at the sight of your beaming faces and energy levels. Having had a not so great start to my New York experience with Hurricane Irene causing all sorts of complications, I wondered if that was a sign for how my CPA journey was going to be. I wondered what it was that we had all come here for, and I quickly realized that our motivations were as diverse as our nationalities. One day was to overhaul cities through urban and social policy, redefine socio-economic boundaries through economic and personal development, work on issues surrounding energy and the environment, or just to find a way of guaranteeing ourselves a top dollar private sector salary for IFP. Just kidding. But from the first person I spoke to, and the many more I engaged with, you were accepting, warm, and loving. And before the day was over, I was a part of CPA. I was a part of us. I remember walking home that evening with a warm feeling in my heart. I knew my next 2 years were going to be shared with extraordinary people. We've grown together, suffering in the Lehman Library dungeons, which, to be honest, I never wanted to. The last-minute rush to hand in our papers, the quest to get the 3.4 GPA and be a teaching assistant, the happy hours, the infamous parties, the frivolities, the scandals, the gossip, the truths, and the bubbled reality. Through all this intensity and insanity, we stuck together and forged deep bonds. We laughed together, comforted each other, procrastinated together, and cried together. We have been with each other at our best and worst moments. We have shared experiences that the rest of the world may not even comprehend, let alone understand. Our time together cannot be replicated. And now, as we're all preparing for next steps and the uncertainty it brings, we need to continue to be there for each other. I know we're all worried about our next job, the city we will live in, the friends we may lose, how much we've changed in the last 2 years, whether any of our decisions are going to be correct or meaningful. At this point, I would say that our anxiety and nervousness are a sign of our commitment to the causes we stand for. It is a testament to our determination and ambition. It is for us to break the shackles, challenge paradigms, go out into the world and do what we set out to do. To live our dreams, follow our passions, and pay our debts to society and debts to financial institutions. It is our time to take charge, to consolidate what we've learned, to capitalize on our support structure and believe in ourselves. Each day that passes will present choices. The choices we make don't need to make sense looking forward, but our education presents us with the option to choose to live our lives by our own choices. This is the greatest freedom we will ever receive. And when we look back in the rearview mirror of life, everything will make sense. I have made choices that didn't make any sense to people close to me. Some choices were good, some were lucky, and some were brutally incorrect. But all of them have shaped me, helped me grow, taught me to love and appreciate, given me the ability to encourage you to choose without regret. Trust yourself, listen to your gut, and follow your dream. Don't let others define you. Be bold, be brave, be curious, be creative, be foolish, be selfless, and give back. Thank you. So the reason I wanted to share this video was because I understand all of you are now graduating or will be graduating very soon, and everybody's going to make a decision about what next in their lives. And that is exactly where I was 2 years ago, in 2012, when I was trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. Am I going back to UBS, or do I want to do something else? And the 2-3 stories which have guided my decision making, which I'll quickly share with you. Do people know about Victoria's Secret, the lingerie brand? Do we know the story about it? Yeah? Okay, so I'll quickly tell you. So Roy Raymond was the guy who started Victoria's Secret. He was a guy, a middle-aged fellow who wanted to buy lingerie for his wife, but he didn't want to go into a store and be thought of as a pervert, standing around looking at lingerie. So what he did was, he collected $40,000 from friends and family, and $40,000 from the bank, so $80,000, and he started Victoria's Secret. The name Victoria because it was all Georgian lingerie at that time. And he started the store. In a year, he had about $500 million worth of revenues. In 2 years, he sold it for $4 million. And he thought he'd made a killing. Started with $40,000, made $4 million. But 2 years later, the private equity guys who bought it sold the same company for about $32 million. And that's the day Roy Raymond jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And in his note, he said that I did not understand how far my idea could go. And the second story that has defined a lot in my life and my decision making. Have people heard of the California gold rush that we know here? So when civilization moved to the United States, people found gold on the West Coast, and everybody died. Do you know who made the most amount of money in the California gold rush? Any guesses? So usually when I do this at a lot of other places, people, they know that if I'm asking a question, it's probably not the guy who's struck the most amount of gold. So they'll make guesses, the train line, the motels, the horse carriages. It was the shovel makers. So the guys who enabled you to pursue your dream are the guys who made the most amount of money. So these 2 stories made me realize that there are a few things that people pay for. And people love to pay for information and convenience. If you try and break down every business that we encounter, you can break them down as either you're giving somebody more access to more information, so better decision making, or you're just making it convenient to act on some sort of information. And that is how I founded the 3 ventures that I have today. So the first venture I founded was Agritam India. Agritam is a Sanskrit word which means forward or advanced. And it is a social venture. It has 2 arms, for-profit and not-for-profit. It works in Bihar. We work with fishermen largely. The idea is that Bihar is a state where we eat a lot of fish. And there's about 5,000 crores worth of fish that we eat a year. And we only produce about 3.5 crores worth of fish. So 2,000 crores worth of fish is imported every year. But Bihar has a lot of land. We have a lot of low-lying wasteland, which we call chores. And we have about 9 lakh hectares of it. So we have all this wastewater lying around, and we have this demand for fish. And we have 15 million fishermen who are below poverty line in Bihar. So what we do is we bring this unproductive land into productive use for fish farming. That's what the for-profit arm does. And the for-profit arm is essentially like a private equity fund. We partner with rural entrepreneurs, we help them get bank linkage, and we exit in 7 years, and these guys stick on for 29 years. The not-for-profit arm, we work with about 1,500 women We have more than 132 self-help groups. All of them are being trained in employable activities and income-generating activities. We constructed about 2,000 toilets. We work with a lot of rural youth. And we also run 94 ambulances in Bihar. So we run the only advanced life support ambulances in Bihar. So that is what Agritam India does. My second venture is Skill Hippo. And this has a funny story to it. So when we were in college, like how you guys are today, you are known for the course you attend. I wasn't known in college because I attended maths. I was known in college because I was a debater. So people knew that, okay, Akshay is a debater. People knew that Rahul is a guitarist, or somebody else is a basketball player. Everybody had a skill to them. Everybody had a hobby or an interest that they would pursue. But then we get into the rat race, we start doing our jobs, and then 3 years later, all you do is go to the bar and complain about how bossy your boss is, or how sucky your job is, or how much money you're making. But we sort of lose the social edge that we used to have back in college. And that is how we thought that even if I want to do something today, I don't know where to go and where to find a trainer. Where do I find a photography trainer? Where do I find an art trainer? Where do I find a culinary enthusiast? So then we decided to bring it all together. And that is how Skill Hippo came to be. And Skill Hippo essentially connects people who want to learn a hobby and who want to teach a hobby. So we have about 1 lakh users now. We've been around for 2 years. And now we're just based in Delhi, but we're now looking to expand. So again, what Skill Hippo does is give you information easily. Like, you can think of it as a Zomato for skills if you want. And the third one that we have is Arion Ratings. Arion is those who follow mythology or read mythology. It's a Greek mythological character. So Poseidon was the god of the oceans, and Gaia is the goddess of the earth. But Poseidon had a crush on Gaia. So Zeus, his father, said, make something for Gaia that she will appreciate. So he set out to make this magnificent creature, and he built a horse that could speak, that had the power of speech, and could fly. But by the time he made this, he'd forgotten about Gaia. He didn't care about Gaia anymore. And that horse was called Arion, which is why we named ourselves Arion, because, like I said, a lot of people forget the journey they're being a part of. And after 2 startups, when I was coming to Arion, I'd sort of forgotten the joys of being an entrepreneur. I was so embroiled with the trouble that comes with it, the policies, the people, and it's not easy. So let me first tell you about Arion. So what Arion does is, we're in partnership with the University of Oxford. We rate NGOs in India. Today there are more than 20 lakh NGOs in India, but nobody rates them. There's no due diligence, no assessment of NGOs. And now that the CSR law is mandatory, people looking for people like us. We're the only service providers in India right now. So that is what Arion does. About the journey so far, because I was asked to share it, it's been a mixed bag really. So for something like Agritam, I've had a phenomenal journey. I moved back to India on 2nd August 2013, and I'm standing in front of you in November 2014. And during this, Agritam has won many accolades from the University of Oxford, from the London Business School, from funds like Acumen. We've done really well. The Economic Times recognized me as one of the 6 young business leaders because of Agritam and Skill Hippo. Agritam has been phenomenal, because it is something tangible, people understood, people could see the need gap. But on the flip side, Skill Hippo has been a different sort of ride. Skill Hippo has been something that is innovative, something that people don't really get. Tech is not something that people can value immediately. Only people who understood this and have been in that space can value it. So if you ask my parents, what does Akshay do? They probably can't tell you about Skill Hippo. They'll tell you, my mom is very unhappy that I sell fish. She feels that why do I need to study if I have to do fish farming? But my father can explain fish, but nobody can explain Skill Hippo. And Arion is a new concept. People don't get what impact assessment means. People aren't understanding the triple bottom line just yet. And again, that is something that not many people understand, so we have to simplify it and say, hey, I just do due diligence and assessment of NGOs. But there's much more to it. So it's a very mixed bag being an entrepreneur. You have to be very sure of what you're doing. And like I said about Roy Raymond, until you realize or you understand fully how far your idea can go, there's an inherent loss in quitting. But then on the flip side, if you don't know when to cut your losses, you'll probably end up in a ditch. So there's a lot of trade-offs you have to continually make, and to build a team, it's very difficult, because the moment you start losing faith or you start losing hope, everyone around you gets demotivated, because the only person they're circling around or they're centering their energy is you. So being an entrepreneur is a lot of fun. It's definitely more fun than banking, but I feel it is very similar to what I used to do. Being in the leverage finance arm, I used to handle multiple tasks at the same time, multiple projects, and I used to work with these PE funds day in, day out. So basically we were looking at portfolio assets, which is what I do now. So I have 3 startups, and it's almost similar to my job, but of course I don't get paid for it, and it's a different sort of journey, and lifestyle suffers, but luckily I'm not married, I'm single, so there isn't much constraints to me. Apart from that, I think my only advice to people who do want to be an entrepreneur will be that it is good that you guys have people like Ashu who are around, and Professor and your ED cell, which did not exist in my time when I was in college. We did entrepreneurs, I feel that in India don't get as much support as is required, because a lot of people don't understand and we're very governed by getting a job. But guys, there are not going to be enough jobs in India, so people need to be entrepreneurs, people need to be innovative. We're damn educated, and you guys, especially when the worst you can perform is that you already have an MBA. So even if you go for a job, even if you go try your luck at being an entrepreneur and you fail, you always have this to fall back on, which is somebody's dream anyway. So your starting point is much ahead of other people's. So I would really encourage you guys to step out into the world and try something and try and create something innovative, because everyone like me is looking at you guys to make our world a better place. It's not going to happen automatically, and there's no other person who's going to do it. So the onus really to make it a better place is on you. So I really hope that you guys think about entrepreneurship as a serious career option, and you're very fortunate to have people to support you. And for us it has been a lonely ride, and now I'm getting to know people, and I hadn't been in India for 8 years, but now that I've come back, I'm beginning to meet people who are supportive. But it is a difficult ride. And for you guys, you already have that support sitting in front of me right now. So all the best to you guys, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'm around till about 2:30. Thank you very much for having me here.